Hi everyone. Many of you have been asking how to do resonant frequency breathing. Uh, John is here with us for the demonstration today. What you'll notice on the screen right now is that obviously John is on the bottom left-hand corner. The screen itself, if you look at the screen, has three rows. The bottom row is representing your carbon dioxide level. The middle row representing the beat-to-beat heart rate or the heart rate variability. And the top row is representing the balance between your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. If you look at it, the red zone is representing, it's what we call a very low frequency zone representing the sympathetic nervous system. The green zone is the a low frequency zone, which is representing a balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system. And the purple zone is the high frequency zone representing the parasympathetic activity. So when we do have a resonance, or when the breathing and the heart rate kind of comes in sync, you'll notice that there will be a peak in the green zone. That's when you'll find that the nervous system is, shall we call it, calm, so that both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic activity is actually fairly low at that point in time. We'll try to demonstrate that today. Everybody is it's variable among each individual, so sometimes it's hard to say, but we will try to demonstrate the point to try to get to resonant frequency. So what we're going to start off with, John, is that we're going to try to, John is pretty good right now. We have about 35 millimeter of partial pressure of carbon dioxide, which is if you look at the lower row, the bottom row, you'll see that John has a carbon dioxide level of 35. What if you did not have? Now, obviously, John and I have been working a bit in terms of his breath work, so we've been able to achieve 35 fairly consistently. John was never at 35 before. Earlier when he first came to see me. He was around 30 or less than 30 most of the time. So we've been able to use different breathing in terms of being sort of bringing the breath awareness actually more than anything else. So he's been able to achieve 35 pretty consistently. So what I'm going to do right now is to try to demonstrate to you what happens when you have, let's say for example, to the carbon dioxide level and to the heart rate variability as well when you do, let's see, fast breathing versus slow breathing. So I'm going to get John to demonstrate a little bit. John, if you could just show us a little bit in terms of doing fast breathing, a little faster. You will see as soon as he does that, you'll see the carbon dioxide level dropping on the lower right-hand corner there. You can see that. And you can also see the heart rate variability, the amplitude becomes smaller as well. If you notice that as well. So you'll notice that as well, the heart rate variability amplitude on the second row gets smaller as well. Okay, so John, just slow down a little bit your breath now. So you can see what happens to his carbon dioxide level is actually coming back to 35. He's doing really well at this point in time. You'll also notice the heart rate variability amplitude is actually going up as well. That means the difference between the high and the low. So that's a demonstration of fast versus slow breathing. Now in a second, I'm going to ask, and this is the really critical part, the second part, I'm going to ask John to do once he's had to about 35 millimeter mercury, now he's come back to his 35 millimeter mercury range. I'm going to get him to do chest breathing versus diaphragm breathing in a second. So John, if you can just go to diaphragm breathing. Let's just demonstrate diaphragm breathing. Now, part of the training with John over the past several sessions been that we talked about diaphragm breathing, so he's quite aware of it. So he's actually going to be, he's probably in a diaphragm breathing as he was doing his regular breath. So we're going to go to a little bit now into chest breathing. If you can, John, if you can just do chest breathing for me, please. You can see the chest moving up and down. Now you'll see as soon as you look at the lower right-hand side, the carbon dioxide level drops immediately. Let's give me another, maybe a couple more of those breaths, chest breathing. Perfect. Okay, I think let's try to go back to diaphragm breathing, because for John, chest breathing has been really tough for him. So he has a lot of, as soon as he goes into chest breathing, he has a lot of discomfort on his chest. He could have sharp piercing pain and all that stuff. So just slow down your breath a little bit now. And let's just try to concentrate on going to diaphragm breathing, sorry. Perfect. You can see as soon as we go to diaphragm breathing, he's been able to again maintain his CO2 level. So that is very critical in terms of that. Now, one more thing I wanted to do, we're going to go and look at what happens when you do effortful breathing versus quiet breathing. It's also important. So right now, John is probably doing quiet breathing right now. He's in diaphragm. He's doing quiet breathing right now. So in a second, I'm going to ask him to do some effortful breathing in a second. In other words, he uses a lot of a lot of people when they're anxious, they may go into like very fast-paced, kind of a very heavy breathing. So John, we're going to try to show some effortful breathing, if you can do that for me. You can see again on the lower right-hand side what happens to effortful breathing. He actually lowers the CO2 quite a bit. So I don't want him to be in that state for too long, because we need to show out a demonstration. So let's go back to quiet breathing again, please, John. It usually takes a couple of breaths before he can come up to 35. It doesn't happen immediately, because obviously there's a system at work here that's going to take a couple of breaths for him to come back to it. So I think so far we've been able to demonstrate fast breathing versus slow breathing, chest breathing versus diaphragm breathing, mouth breathing versus nose. We haven't got to mouth versus nose, but we'll get to that in a second. Effortful breathing versus quiet breathing. John, if you can show us a little bit in terms of, right now you're doing nose breathing right now at this consistency right now. We have the carbon dioxide level at 35, you're doing beautifully. Let's try to go a little bit to, right now you're in nose breathing, nasal breathing. Let's try to go to mouth breathing for a second, see what happens to the carbon dioxide level. Look at that. Again, it drops immediately. So I'm going to get you, John, to go back to nasal breathing again. Let's just go back to nasal breathing. Perfect. You're going up to 35. Let's, yeah. So we've been able to demonstrate to you why you really need to be doing certain breathing behavior, because it will help you to maintain your carbon dioxide level. Why is the carbon dioxide level so important? Because it helps to give oxygen to your brain and to the rest of the body. Because imagine if you didn't have enough oxygen going to the brain, what could happen? You could have cognition issues. For example, you may not remember things. You may get agitated, you may get angry. So it's very important to maintain the 35 millimeter of carbon dioxide level. So this is the first part of the demonstration. We're going to stop for a second and we're going to go to the second part of the demonstration, which is really show you how to do the resonant frequency breathing. Because you do need to sort of get into the habit of doing all the things we talked about in order to maintain your carbon dioxide level. So now we're going to go into, we're going to stop for a second, go into resonant frequency breathing in a second then. Okay, so now we are at the second part of this demonstration. The first part being all the carbon dioxide sort of a work there. Now we're going to look at resonant frequency breathing. What resonant frequency breathing is that once we have achieved carbon dioxide level of 35, I know, most of you will not have a capno trainer, but if you follow what we talked about earlier, that means if you do quiet breathing, if you do nasal breathing, if you do diaphragm breathing, if you do slow breathing, you should be able to achieve pretty close to 35 millimeter of, for most of you at least, 35 millimeter of carbon dioxide. Right now, John, you can see he's actually gone over 35. He's going towards more towards a 40, which is really good in terms of maintaining the body pH of 7.4. So what we're going to do is that I'm going to get him to slow down his breath a little bit so we can get into what we call resonant frequency breathing now. So what we're looking for is that we're going to maintain your carbon dioxide level of 35 at least. And then on the second row, we want to see all the wavelets being more even. That means there's coherence in the wavelets. And then on the top, what we want to see is that we want to see the red and the purple zone sort of coming down. The activity will be toned down. And that'll be the resonant frequency breathing rate. Okay, John, if you could just slow down slightly for me, not too much, just slow it down a little bit. Just stay and observe your breath. Just observe your breath. Just observe your breath. You don't have to do anything with it. It doesn't require a lot of effort to breathe. So, the air is going to be, we got lots of oxygen in the air surrounding you. So there's no need to worry about that. Just going to slow it down a little bit for us. Just let's go into a little bit into diaphragm breathing, John. Let's go into diaphragm breathing. Concentrate on diaphragm breathing. Let's bring all your thought process into the breath. Just think about breathing. As we can see, we're having a bit of a challenge trying to sort of just staying with the observation of the breath, because that is really important. Just let it go. Yep, perfect. He's doing really well in terms of carbon dioxide level. And yep, let's go like that. I think you're doing really well. Yep, now you can start to see the red zone and the purple zone toning down a lot. That's great. Let's stay with observation of your breath. Stay with the observation of your breath. You're not going anywhere. Just observe your breath. Let's observe your breath. Now you can see we've got pretty good resonance here, but you can see that his thought is probably been right now kind of randomly going all over the place right now. Is that true, John? Yeah. Yeah, he agrees with it, because what he thinks in terms of the breathing actually, what he thinks in terms of his own mind, what's in on mind is actually shows up on the breathing. So although we have pretty good resonance in terms of, the carbon dioxide level is good, and we have some resonance, this is really not what we're talking about. So what we're going to do is that in terms now, we're going to try to switch over to a app, like a IBF app that you guys can get. And you can try to use the app. So I'm going to ask John to switch to, John, we were doing, I believe, 4.5, right? What were we doing? 6 and 3.5. 6 and, you mean 3.5 for inhale and 6.5? I mean, 6 for exhale. 6. So say that again.
3.5 for inhale and 6 for exhale.
Can we do 4 for inhale and 6 for exhale? Yeah, let's try doing that. Yeah. You can see, as John was talking to me, that you can see the carbon dioxide level dropping. And then, of course, when his thought process come into play, you can see the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system is active, and you don't see a peak in the green zone like you did see it a little earlier. All right, so John's going to start right now. We're going to just show in terms of diaphragm again. Stay in the diaphragm, right? Don't go to the chest. Now you can see on if you look at the lower right-hand corner, as he's doing the demonstration, you can see that his breathing is a bit more consistent. Part of the helpful thing with using the app is that it helps to free up your mind to just observe the app itself, so your mind is not scattered all over the place. For example, when you're doing a yoga or something like that, sometimes it's very hard. The monkey mind goes all over the place. So with the app itself, it actually helps to sort of bring your thought process into just observing the app itself in order for you to be able to breathe at a certain rate. So now you'll start to see a bit of a peak in the green zone right now, and you can see things are getting more consistent, and you can also see the middle row where the wavelets, which is a heart rate variability, is actually getting more consistent. In other words, you'll see wavelets are more coherent. And now you can definitely see there's a peak in the green zone. And we're still hoping to see less activity in the red zone, which is your sympathetic activity, and your purple zone, which is the parasympathetic activity. And this is where, as I said earlier, the IBF app would be helpful for you to be able to achieve resonant frequency. All of you guys have asked me, how do you do resonant frequency breathing? And this is how you achieve it now. Obviously, we have the Capno trainer for us to be able to give biofeedback immediately to John to tell him what we need to do and so forth. But without the app, without the actual Capno trainer itself to measure the carbon dioxide, you can also practice this at home with the IBF app. And I think we set it as 4 seconds of inhale and 6 seconds of exhale. So now we're going to change a little bit. What I'm going to try to do is that John is actually nodding his head so he can see his carbon dioxide level is changing right there. So what I'm going to do right now is that, John, maybe we want to change our rate a little bit. Let's look at, we had 4 and 6. How about if we try 4.5 and 6? So we're going to change the rate to inhale 4.5 seconds and exhale 6 seconds. We want to see how is that going to do in terms of the wavelets and in terms of the balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. All right, John's going to get started. He gave me the thumbs up already, so yep. At least the challenge a little bit for John is that, you know, he's lying down and he has this app in his hand, so sometimes it's a little bit challenging for him. So all kudos to him for doing this for us, because he's been very helpful in terms of being able to demonstrate this. Otherwise, we couldn't do this. And, you know, one of the things that you have to kind of, I guess not realize, but know is that really breath work really has to do with what I consider to be being aware of it, one, and being present with your breath. I think those are the two more critical factors than anything else in terms of trying to achieve resonant frequency breathing. As you can see, he's going to start to get more coherent now, because we can see on the bottom row, he's achieving that 35 millimeter of carbon dioxide. And also, you know, he's not, you know, he's just doing diaphragm breathing. All he's doing is right now diaphragm breathing, effortless breathing. That means he's breathing, quiet breathing. He's doing that. He's doing nasal breathing. So you can see that we're getting pretty consistent rate of the breath. And you can see now, again, we're starting to see wavelet formation. And we're starting to see the top part of it, which is your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system sort of toning down. And we're starting to get some peak in the middle there. So for most of us, breathing, you know, inhale for 4.5 seconds and exhale for 6 seconds will give you a pretty good sort of close enough proximity to your resonant frequency breathing. Is it going to be perfect? No. but it's actually pretty close. You can see right now. We're starting to get the peaking in the green zone right now there. Now, obviously, as I said, as your thought process changes, it affects your breathing and affects how you breathe. But we can definitely see the wavelet formation again. I think we're pretty good. If you look at it right now, he's actually toning down quite a bit on his sympathetic and parasympathetic arm, which is the red and the purple arm. And you can see the peak in the middle again. So I think that is actually pretty good in terms of being able to get something like this to a resonant frequency breathing. And I think we're going to pretty well stop the demonstration in the next few seconds. And if you guys have any questions, comment, please put it down on the comment section. I think this will be quite helpful for actually all of us, more or less. To get resonant frequency breathing, you can get it through exercises, but what if you cannot really exercise a lot, for whatever reason? So this would be one way to try to get to resonant frequency breathing. And what we need to do with the resonant frequency breathing is that we need to do this for about 20 minutes a day. So it could be divided into 10 minutes in the morning or 10 minutes at night. And we're not really doing anything very exotic in terms of the breath. You can see that we're doing diaphragm breathing. Again, as I said, I'm stressing the diaphragm breathing because with the diaphragm breathing, we know that demonstrated earlier that we're going to be able to get to 35 millimeter of carbon dioxide of level of mercury so that we can have oxygen going to the brain cells and to the rest of the body. Cool, John. I think we're going to stop there right there. I think that's pretty good. Thank you.